fucking amazing. Do your mom know you do this?
That I'm a police officer?
No, that you harass people of color.
I'm not harassing you.
Do you? He's harassing me. He just pulled me over for no reason. And now his buddy is taking forever. They just called back up. When I asked him to call his supervisor, he didn't want to do that. Now he just called back up.
Now that you're calm?
I've been
now
calm.
That we have your ID?
I've been calm.
I've been more than
That's all he wanted. He wanted to intimidate me to show that he can get me to give him my ID. Now that is a form of kidnapping. That's a false arrest. He is not supposed to do that. But I gave it to him because my son is in the car. And if he would have shot my son, then we would have been on some other shit right now. So can I please have my information back? I want to make sure that my license plate is in front of my car because I know it is.
You'll have your
and I need you to hurry up because I'm on my way to take my son somewhere.
You'll have your information when we're done.
Make sure you're recording him too.
Okay.
And make sure your body cam is on. What's your name? Gordon 282. Goodman 282. Okay. This is what happened when you know and you talk too much. They don't like for you to talk and speak up for yourself. So they call other officers for a child and a woman.
Now that you're calm and we have your ID, would you like to speak to our supervisor?
Who's your supervisor?
I'm asking if you'd like to speak to him.
So I've been asked for your supervisor.
Okay, so you still want him to come here?
Yep.
Okay. Adam 23 to 3071.
Where's your headquarters?
Station.
Where's your station?
Would you mind responding?
924 is at the station.
Where's your station? Where's your station?
901 East 14th Street.
9 what?
901 East 14th Street.
901 East 14th Street. Why is he here?
Because your behavior was erratic.
How is my behavior erratic?
Aggressive and confrontational.
Aggressive. See,
yes,
this is the words that they use to make you seem like you're irate when you know what you're talking about. So when you defend yourself, they start to use irate, erratic, threatening, vicious. I thought I saw something. That's what they start to do. They use these words so they could defend themselves for pulling you over for a false reason. Please know your laws. Read the Black Laws Dictionary because they don't go by the same laws that they say that they put you under. Matter of fact, they don't even have the same jurisdiction that you have. They're private citizens, which means they can harass and pull you over and gun you down in the street and nothing will happen to them because they're private citizens. But if you go after their insurance, then you can dig into their pockets because the insurance companies don't like that. When you go after insurance companies for police falsely pulling people over, they have to keep giving $1 million settlements. They keep murdering people for no reason. The insurance companies don't like that. So when you know your laws, and you go after them in the right way, then you can know how to really get them where it hurts. So I got my son recording.
That is so base. Welcome to a special edition of RBN Live or Revolutionary Blackout Live edition. We have a panel put together, and I'm gonna introduce them as they get here, so they'll be kind of showing up at different times here. But I do see two of our panelists already waiting. But before I bring you guys in, let me just shout out a couple of things. Tonight, whenever System Update is recorded or goes live on Rumble, that's Glenn Greenwald's show. Nick will be on the show tonight. So make sure you check that out tonight. The other thing is, we haven't given you an update or just shouted out the upcoming summit that we have coming up. Let me make sure I start to insert this here. The Labor Organizing Summit. Did I say that right? The Labor Organizing Summit. Yes, that's going to be Saturday, July 29th, and it's being held in conjunction or in solidarity with Worker Strike Back. So they are also helping to run this summit. 10 to 10 is the projection. A lot of times when we have these summits, we start out with a particular number and then we just have to add at the end. So I just want to give that heads up just in case that's something we end up doing. And then one of our other things that we've been missing, I'm supposed to shout out, made a point, is our website. Make sure you go check out our website. What there's a lot of changes we're going to be making here and there, but for those that are in Boston, you've been waiting for just the library, and you can go see more updated pictures of the library if you want to. But if you're in Boston, you've been waiting for the ability to come on here and go to the Boston section and put in a mutual request form order. So it's now there. I wanted to point to. So this is something they're doing in the Boston chapter. If you need a mutual aid request order. So, hey, I need some help mowing my lawn. I need some help with this, or I need some help with computers and tutoring, something like that. You can put in a mutual request. Let me show you right here, actually. Instead of talking about it, you can see it, and it is here. So if you go to the Boston chapter, and I'll show you, you click RBN chapters at the top, you scroll down, show some of the things we want to do at all. This is combine all of our chapters. It's not each chapter doing each one of these things. This is all of our chapters put together, the goals for our local chapters. But when you go to what they're doing in the Boston branch, like I said, I'm repeating myself now that it's on the screen. You can put in an order form for a mutual aid request here. And it looks like this. I thought I had it on the screen earlier. I forgot I didn't put it up. Mutual aid request form, basic stuff, name, street address. And then things like financial literacy, STEM learning, self-care, meditation, yoga, stress relief, higher education alternatives, housing and tenants' rights, grow your own food, Marxist theory, how to start a worker co-op, other. You can fill in other, hit that submit button. So that's what they're doing at the Boston chapter. So make sure you check out our website. We got to remember to shout that out. That's our email right there, since we have a lot of new people now. I'm going to be bringing in our guest in just a second here. Let me go ahead and pull up the topics now. And I see, okay, so I'll be bringing you in, Anthony. So I see you're just about ready. So let me just shout out the topics, though. There's some reporting I saw. I think Middle East Eye is the publication, or is the news outlet that this story is from. But on the screen, you see Jeffrey Epstein, and the story connected to him is Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing politicians for Israel's Mossad. So that's what the story is. We're going to be covering that. And then, of course, there's clueless Joe Biden. He could be up there for a number of reasons, but the one we're going to be talking about is the abortion rights grift of the Democratic Party. And Joe Biden tweeted today, "It's time for Congress to codify Roe v. Wade once and for all." So they're going to be using that this go round. And then we have a story from AOC out of Jacobin. Jacobin's headline says AOC shouldn't have endorsed Biden. And it's by, of course, Ben Bridges. So we're going to be talking about that one. And then we'll just cover a couple of videos from Case Study QB where just different videos about the polling, about the election, about the fear of Cornel West. We'll be talking about all of those. But let's go ahead and bring in one of our first guests that's ready to join us. And this is a great friend of the show. He's been on here many times. Going to try to bring him on regularly, maybe weekly when he has the time and availability to join us on this day, actually. I think Wednesday or Thursday would be a good day to have him on regularly. But he is a professor at Columbia University, Adelphi, I believe. That's how you say it, Adelphi or Adelphi. University is a professor at both of those universities. Professor Anthony Z. What's up, Anthony?
Hey, Nice to see you, Jay. You know,
Yeah.
lots going on in the world as usual. They keep you busy.
And I like to bring you on because you give a more tempered. Sometimes you have those historical references and receipts that I'm just not able to pull, out of the thin air. I'm a more like not from memory. I have to like read things and be up to date on things for me to kind of be. But it's great to have you on. How you doing today? Thanks for joining.
But also, in your defense, I will say you're covering massive amounts of topics on an almost daily basis, and you can't know everything about everything. I know what I know. It's easy for me because I don't have to, always put this together. Getting invited on once a week or so is different, but I love the interaction because between you, me, Nick, whatever esteemed guests you have on, we always come up with some perspective that I hope helps your audience see things a little more deeply and connects the dots. So it's always exciting to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see actually he got up again, but I'll be bringing in Colin. It looks like he the plumber showed up at the last minute. I actually had that happen to me a couple of months ago. So I do understand. But I see Colin is now ready, so I'll be bringing him in right now. And Colin from any news network, but you also know him from here because he's been on the network many times. He's been on the JB show, been on the Sabby show, been on Nick and CJ was last week, and he's another guest I want to bring on more regularly, hopefully available on a weekly basis, 3 times a month or something like that. But regularly I want to bring on Colin. But here is Colin. What's up, Colin?
What's up, CJ? What's up, Anthony? What's up to RBN fam? Happy Thursday, y'all. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining. So just so it doesn't seem like I'm telling all of my guests, just so it doesn't seem like it's out of the blue, Wednesday and Thursdays are the days I will be asking you guys to come on, just so you know kind of already
Sure.
What it's going to be like. Okay, so and then I see another guest has shown up. And this is an extra special. I mean, all of our guests are special, extra special guests. I want to give him his flowers because he helps us in the background with some of our social media and other things that we need done. This is I call him Jay sometimes, but since there's 2 J's here, let's call the great Jay. Let's call him Apollo, which is the other name, his other name. So what's up, Apollo?
Hey everybody, how's it going? Looking forward to this wonderful panel. Like this power team right here.
Yeah, good looking group. So again, Jay, just thanks for joining. I'm trying to make Wednesday and Thursday the day where we have these panels because people, every time we have them, we have a good reaction from it where people are like, oh, I love the panel. They like to see the different perspectives. But what I wanted to start with today, I think I'm going to start with the AOC part of this story, and it is, I want to not say up front, this is not meant to be any sort of bashing segment of Jacobin magazine or anything like that, but we are here to give our opinions and analysis and critique of this recent story. And this story is on Jacobin.com, and it's written by, I would say sarcastically, friend of the show, Ben Bridges. Ben Bridges. Just jokingly, not anything serious, but Ben Bridges wrote this article here. It's entitled AOC Shouldn't Have Endorsed Joe Biden. And I want to just ask my panelists, have any of you had a chance to kind of glance over it or read it? Or I want to know how many of us is going in blind here for just so we can prepare you.
Did you talk about this, I believe, with Due Dissonance the other day, CJ? Because I definitely heard this article. Someone in the space was referring to this article, so I definitely heard it.
No, I wasn't involved. Yeah, so if due dissidence talked about it, it wasn't when I was involved.
Okay,
So no,
but yeah,
I haven't.
I definitely heard this article being read by somebody within the last day or two.
Okay, so then I was hoping at least one of you had saw or heard it. What before we read it, what were your thoughts? What did you think after hearing the story?
I mean,
what
water is wet,
assessment?
the sky is blue. Our government is a corrupt courtocracy in cosplaying as a democracy. You can fill in the blank. So it's, it's bad when Jacobin of all places is now saying what we have been saying this whole time, but we generally get smeared or cussed out, when we actually say this. So it doesn't mean, it doesn't really mean a lot to me, given that this is banned, because he's still going to go to bat for the Democrats anyway when it comes time to it. So, but yeah, as I said, it's bad if Jacobin is having to say the truth in this way.
What I always ask in these contexts of the revelation of the sort of these professional managerial class type of magazines or articles like The Nation is that what is the consequence that you're going to like? What is the ramifications? It's just sort of you did bad,
right?
And there's never a thing that would show them that their voters or constituents are not happy with what's going on. But let's read the article and we can probably respond a little bit better. Let me know, any spot you want me to stop. I can't see you, so you got to give me a verbal sort of cue. But let's read. Leading left-wing politicians, including Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, and most recently Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have already endorsed Joe Biden, even though primary voters haven't yet had their say, and most Democrats in polls don't even want him to run. So that is the wet, water is wet sort of argument, I would say. But let me continue. A few days ago, Democratic Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, became the latest in a string of prominent progressive politicians to endorse Joe Biden's bid for re-election. One of her fellow squad members, Minnesota's Ilhan Omar, endorsed Biden almost a month ago when AOC wasn't quite ready to join her. Bernie Sanders endorsed him way back in April, but why should any of them endorse Biden, especially right now? It would be one thing if this were late 2024 and the country were facing an imminent choice between Biden and Donald Trump, or Biden and Ron DeSantis, and there was a real danger that the greater evil would win. Right now, though, we're several months away from the first primaries. And let me pause here because I have a reaction here. And that is, they're trying to make a distinction that basically we're going to lay over, and eventually, but why are we doing it right now is the basic argument. But this is the part where I tweeted about, and it wasn't because of this article, just somebody else was making this argument, that it would be one thing if this was late 2004 and the country were facing an imminent choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and there was a real danger between a greater evil would win, a greater evil. He's acknowledging that the Democrats are evil, I guess, but that they would win, and somehow that they are greater. And we've all kind of tweeted about this, but has the Joe Biden presidency been the lesser of the two evils as far as legislation, as far as the effects policies between the Trump presidency and now? Do either of you have any opinions on that? about which one has been, I don't know, measurably better, like things that you can actually point to, not just like a feeling of better. Does anybody have like an opinion on whether or not the two presidencies are sort of equal, or one has been worse than the other?
Yeah, I think I'll go first. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I'm personally not against the idea of voting for the lesser of two evils, but between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, there is no lesser evil. They're by every single metric the same. If not, Joe Biden's probably worse. Joe Biden's probably deported more people than Trump has in his 4 years. In 1 year, Joe Biden deported more than Trump did in 4 years. And the same thing with Obama. Obama in his first year, in his last year, deported way more undocumented immigrants than Donald Trump did his first year. And we were all like the entire country was almost panicking at the thought of Donald Trump starting World War III, and here's Joe Biden literally starting World War III, and more than half the country is literally actively cheering him on in that. So no, there is no lesser evil in any of this between Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Hillary Clinton. Name a person. Like, there is no lesser evil. So find me a lesser evil, and I'll like arguably say, okay, maybe it might be worth voting for that person if there is a lesser evil, but there is no lesser evil here. That's one thing I wanted to say. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, do you guys remember the timeline of events for the 2020 election? We were all pushing AOC to endorse Bernie, the entire squad to essentially endorse Bernie ahead of time. But she said, no, I'm not going to endorse him ahead of time because the New York primary is in April, and I want to give the voters a chance to have their say in the vote. So I'm not going to endorse ahead of time. But then Bernie got that heart attack, and then she's like, oh, no, I got to endorse right away to help him with the campaign and everything. And we all know how the rest went. But she was actively supporting that. Oh, let's give the voters a chance to have their say in the matter in 2020. But now, come 2024, she's like, nope, I'm going to endorse Joe Biden right away. Where you're going to shut the fuck up, you're going to agree with me, and you're going to go along with it. So
I think that speaks to her acknowledging that she understands she's being used by the establishment to help Joe Biden. Like, she understands she's being an effective tool, or at least a progressive tool, I should say. But Colin, were you going to chime in, or Anthony, we're going to chime in before we get back to the article?
Go ahead, Anthony, because I spoke already.
Oh yeah, just I think it's very clear that they've coordinated this. This wasn't like, oh, I just happened, to endorse early. Bernie just happened to endorse early. Ilhan Omar happened to endorse early. This was coordinated. There was pressure put on them by the leadership. Hakeem Jeffries, most likely, who is one of the most virulent anti-progressives in Congress, worked really hard, Hakeem Jeffries, to undermine progressive challengers of Democratic incumbents. So he's a rat. He's not a good guy. And that's why he was chosen. And of course, the squad lockstep supported him. The only thing I can conclude from this is that AOC, Ilhan Omar, Alanna Pressley, Bernie Sanders are doing this, endorsing Joe Biden now, an enemy of the working class, because they do not want us to have health care. They do not want us to have a living wage. They want us to have massive military budgets, and they want us to be on the brink of World War III. There's no other reason for them to have done this except to silence any opposition. They haven't even heard, because they haven't even called for debates. It would have been fairly logical if I were in office, even if I secretly wanted to endorse Biden because I was going to go along with the establishment because it makes me money and keeps my seat safe. I might have said, well, let's wait for the debates. Let's hear from other people. We need to have debates. They didn't call for debates, and also they have shown themselves by endorsing Biden to have joined the side of the enemies of the working class. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. We're in a fight for our lives. 68,000 Americans die every year because we don't have Medicare for all. And in the middle of a deadly pandemic where you've had popular support for something, Biden didn't even push the public option, and neither did they. That was inadequate, but at least it would have helped some people. So there are, I tweeted this the other day, there are no progressives in the Democratic Party. There are no good Democrats. I mean, it's just where we're at now. It's we shouldn't be blamed for calling it out.
But if we want to look at the bright side, this is where, you know, where all of us are in a position, or all of us, even just, you know, if we don't have a podcast, this is the opportunity to sell people on coming together across all political lines, across different beliefs against one particular enemy, and that's the ruling class. So this is the opportunity with people so uninterested in politics, uninterested in supporting the Democrats. I saw on a newscast, I think it was I don't want to name and be wrong, but basically say that the support in for Democrats in the Black community was in the 80s, like 86%. And then a recent poll, it was down to like 53%, which is ridiculous for them. Like, that's terrible for them. And this is of Black people that participate, because more than half the Black people, the whole Black community, we don't participate in electoral politics. But of those that participate, they've said it's something like 30+% difference, which is devastating for them. So there is clearly a lack of interest in the Democratic Party in particular, where we're not believing this game anymore. And this is going to kind of tie into another story we have about Joe Biden that I mentioned, where he's basically saying, oh, it's time to codify. So codifying is back. But let me read a little more so we can get a little more through this article here. And again, Ben Bridges, I mean, this isn't accurate. It's not like we have any issues with the assessment. It's a pretty accurate assessment so far. But why? So I'll read this again. But why should any of them endorse Biden, especially right now? It'd be one thing if this were late 2024 and the country were facing an imminent choice between Biden and Donald Trump, or Biden and Ron DeSantis, and there was a real danger that the greater evil would win. Right now, though, we're several months away from the first primary. Socialist politicians should be articulating a clear alternative to the business as usual centrism of Biden and other leading Democrats. That's not all they should be doing. Of course, they should also work towards concrete reforms that will make life better for working class people in the here and now. And admittedly, these goals are sometimes in tension, but it's hard to see a long-term way forward for the left that doesn't start with being very clear about the fact that leftists and centrists aren't one in the same team. Same team. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so earlier today, I saw a post from the Democrat Party account on Twitter saying, shitting on Trump for suggesting that we should pull out of NATO, whereas, and having a side-by-side picture of Joe Biden saying we should expand NATO and saying the choice is clear, or something to that effect, basically suggesting that like expanding NATO is better. So they're, and I don't think Ben Bridges is a dumb guy. Like he knows this shit. Like this is his livelihood. He probably pays attention to this shit. The fact that he can still look at all that shit and suggest that Joe Biden is a lesser evil, despite everything he says. And then the sentence right here: leftists and centrists aren't on the same team, but then turn around and endorse the centrist candidate anyway. Centrist is being generous. Like right wing is just what Joe Biden is. That's just a reality of it. But it's just I do think it is a fair question for Ben Bridges to ask that, like, why is AOC endorsing somebody this early when last cycle she didn't? However, the idea of suggesting that Joe Biden is a lesser evil just shows you where Ben Bridges' loyalties lie, and where they're always going to lie, unfortunately.
It's almost like progressives know none of these things are going to work, but they still want to go through the motions. And she's skipping steps. You get what I'm saying? She's skipping steps. And he's like, wait. Let's just go through the regular emotions. We know we're going to eventually end up here, but let's go through the emotions. And this is where we kind of I think all of us have kind of spoken to this point where we're like, we don't want to, like, what we're saying up front, this is going to happen. So why are we forcing ourselves to go through these types of emotion? Is that a thing, Professor? Is that a thing where, say for instance, like in a relationship, a person who understands or sees or has gotten evidence that being in a relationship with this person is gonna be bad, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. Is that a thing in psychology or in your field?
It is a thing, but I would say it's not Bernie, AOC, and Ilhan Omar, etc., that are the ones that you're referring to. I would say that it's us.
Yes.
In particular, because in the dynamics of an abusive relationship, one partner has power and consolidates that power over the other partner. So domestic violence, intimate partner violence is less about physical abuse, although that happens, and it can be deadly. It's less about physical abuse than it is about power and control. One person consolidating their power over another person. And it's interesting how they do it. An abusive partner will prevent the victim. They'll try to cut them off from family members, from friends. They try to control their jobs. So they control all aspects of the person. So that person is very dependent on them. So it is not hyperbole to suggest that is exactly what the Democrats are doing to us, and that AOC, etc., are joining with the main abuser, who's Biden, and he's the head of the party ostensibly, and the party mechanism, the party structure, to abuse us. And it's typical in an abusive situation. They'll be like, listen, nobody, I may not be perfect, but you think you're going to find someone else there that loves you as much as I do. You're not worth it. And so those are things, it's really despicable. Being in an abusive situation really grinds away at a person's concept of self. That's what's happening to us. We are told, don't even look at the Greens. In fact, we're not even going to let them on the debate stage, and we're not going to let you look at anybody else either. Nobody else is serious. It's the same language. Hey, we may not be perfect. Hey, but those other guys over there, the Republicans, they're really, really abusive. This is typical perpetrator-victim dynamics. I understand why people that don't have the emotional and mental energy to dive into the issues like many of us do. I understand why they vote Democrat. I get it. I do. And everyone's got their own journey. But to suggest that these Democrats aren't abusive, I think you just framed it perfectly with that. So unfortunately, that's where we are.
Yeah, and then it feels like they're the enablers of this abuse. Like you're enabling it by telling people to go back, by somebody who's being giving them an advice to go back, and just that it feels like that's what some of these people in leftist progressive, so-called progressive media spaces are doing, because you if you are a reporter, you're on the ground, you should know firsthand the devastation of both parties, and you should be the first one not sort of recommending that. And that's what it feels like to me. I don't know.
I would just say one quick thing and turn it over to everybody else, but let's look at those podcasters and see how much money they're making, because those who are truly working class and struggling aren't saying it. Maybe Jimmy Dore's probably an exception, because I'm guessing he makes something from his merch and from his large platform.
Oh yeah.
But and good, because he's a great critic of the Democrats. That said, you look at those other guys, What's the well? Obviously, TYT. They're perceived as left, but they're not. They're making tons of money, and so isn't Chank's cousin on a podcast too, and of course
Yeah.
Hassan, that's his nephew.
Pod, yes,
Yeah.
thank you,
Oh,
and
okay.
Pod Save America. All these guys, like they're not making decisions. Do I pay the rent or buy
Right.
clothes for my kids for school? They don't have to make those choices anymore, so they're not on our side. They're not.
feels desperate. But let's continue through the article here. I left out. Okay, right here. So left politicians should be looking for opportunities to make those distinctions clear. A premature show of unity with the president who intervened to break a rail strike just 7 months ago does exactly the opposite. A strong signal of Democratic unity. The Associated Press headline about AOC's decision to endorse Biden called it a strong signal of Democratic unity, but how united are Democrats on a second Biden term? Just before Biden kicked off his re-election bid in late April, one poll found that 73% of Americans didn't want the president to run again. That number included 52% of voters who identify, as Democrats. Wow, so more than half, or slightly more than half. As Nathan Robinson points out in Current Affairs, which has been terrible on this topic also, current affairs, I must say. It's so weird how they all kind of know each other and reference each other to sort of give each other's credibility, but it's the same sort of milquetoast point of view, stay within the same Democratic Party. Because if you wouldn't guess it, but the way Nate Robinson is tweeted now is like he's all down for Cornel West, but everybody not forget the first article he wrote after Cornel West announced was like he shouldn't be running, or he should be running as a Democrat. That was the first article he wrote. Now he seemed to have softened a lot on that idea, at least in some of his recent tweets I've seen. But let's continue. As Nate Robinson points out in Current Affair, before Biden's announcement, we were seeing headlines like, quote, Democrats coalesce around a Biden 2024 run as re-election decision looms, side by side with ones like, quote, most Democrats don't want Biden to run in 2024, AP NOC poll finds, end quote. The key, Robinson pointed out, is to realize that Democrats mean two different things. There are a great deal of Democratic unity from above beyond Biden. Politicians and party officials were marching lockstep behind him before he'd even officially made up his mind. What there absolutely isn't is a Democratic unity from below. So I'm thinking he's saying, if it's coming between Democrats and Republicans, we're down for that unity. But, everything, I'm assuming that's what he means by below. Below is everything maybe in the primaries, maybe before him being the nominee. But what is your take, or what anyone want to chime in at this point?
I kind of interpret the below is us. That's how I interpret it.
Okay.
The idea that you can also make the argument that Republicans want Biden to win the nomination too, because especially given, let's make the assumption that Trump will win the nomination on their end, they need him to go against Biden, who of the two is politically and rhetoric-wise weaker than Trump is. The issue that I think Ben is mentioning is that Biden doesn't have that support from us in terms of, if you're more Democratic leaning, we are seeing the reality of how Biden has governed to how it has affected us in our day-to-day life for the last almost 3 years. The idea of now we're in inflation right now, things are a lot more expensive, just as far as basic necessities are way more expensive. You know, people are getting kicked off of healthcare now that the pandemic is over. People are struggling. And so people are not necessarily feeling that the Democratic Party, I think generally, especially if you're in the working class, really feels that Democrats have been looking out for their best interests. And then there's people like AOC, who we can guess is very aware of all the suffering that people are going through, especially in her district. And just to kind of ignore that, to endorse Biden a year and a half out from the election without making those considerations of the people apparent, I think is very heinous. The idea that Ben Burgess is saying the squad needs to talk more, they need to articulate these issues more. Haven't they been doing that? I mean, they say online, oh, we need Medicare for all. Oh, we need insert progressive policy on Twitter. But they're not doing anything, or at least very minimal, of pushing these policies to where there's actually action towards. And that's where I think personally the frustration is. It's one thing to kind of share on Twitter your needs, our needs, but you're not doing anything, or at least elevating the issues by action as to what to make those issues get a little bit closer to actually being a reality. Like the idea that Bernie said when he was on the campaign trail, like if he were to be president, he would be essentially I'm just paraphrasing here, the advocate in chief. So basically he would take on the role of challenging the establishment, holding rallies in that regard. You know, other than the stunt that Cori Bush and AOC did now 2 summers ago, where's the push? Where are the rallies? Where is the tension coming from them? So, and I agree with you, CJ. I think with Ben, he's almost kind of excusing all of that, or kind of not, maybe this was intentional or not, but Burgess doesn't mention this here. It's the idea of, we didn't vote the squad in to talk about these issues. We voted them in to challenge their party, because the Democratic Party, I would argue, is the larger problem, because we know that the Republicans are shit. We know this, and there's no need to kind of hammer that issue over the head. Like, we know the Republicans are shit. The question is, now that, well, Democrats still hold the Senate barely, and the White House barely, what are they doing, to counter their own party, especially those members in their party who go against the interests of their constituents more often than not? We don't hear AOC talking about that. Instead, she blames the Senate. Like, oh, it's the Senate's issue that we haven't been able to get any of these progressive policies in place. When her leader, Nancy Pelosi, basically, that the Supreme Court quoted her saying that we cannot cancel student loan debt. She wouldn't dare do that. So there's been enough talking, but no action. And I think, and I don't remember the article well enough, but I don't think Ben has mentioned that in terms of, he's saying, oh, we need to talk more, versus, where is the action steps that the squad is giving to kind of encourage the people on the ground to actually move forward in some of these progressive policies that they claim that they want to see come to reality.
I can continue. This will be the last two paragraphs we're going to read, and then we'll move on to the next story. That doesn't mean Biden won't win renomination. Realistically, he almost certainly will, in large part because of the unity from above. That's the above part he speaks to. No Democratic elected official has thrown their hat in the ring to oppose him in the primaries. The only two candidates who have are RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, widely derived as a conspiracy theorist with unsavory associations and a suspicious amount of Republican support. It's currently hard to see how Kennedy would get enough Democratic support to dethrone a Democratic incumbent, even one who doesn't inspire such much enthusiasm among Democratic voters. That is a curious sort of description. Now, I'm not a fan of RFK Jr., but this is a curious description, widely derided as a conspiracy theorist with unsavory association and a suspicious amount of Republican support. That is a very funny, weird way to describe it. And it comes straight out of cable news, mainstream media.
I mean,
it's funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I mean, it kind of sounds like controlled opposition from right out of the get-go, because just from the way he's wording everything, it sounds he's immediately undercutting RFK Jr. I mean, I'm no fan of RFK Jr., but like the only time he mentions RFK Jr., he follows it up with like some undermining comment, So immediately, to me, it comes off as some sort of controlled opposition. Earlier in the article, there were some points that Ben Burgess made that I did agree with, but he's a wrong fucking messenger, because come 2024, he's going to fucking kiss Joe Biden's ass hardcore, and so he's called out completely with everything he says. Like, no, get the fuck out of here. Like, okay, you made some good points, but you are the wrong fucking messenger. So this is everything he's saying here is just coming off as controlled opposition. Will he ever come out and support Cornel West running as the Green Party candidate? Will he? I don't think he will.
Probably not.
Because that will actually challenge the duopoly. That will actually challenge Joe Biden, and he's not going to do that. So, RFK, he has a shitload of criticisms, but to word it in the way that he did, immediately comes off as some sort of controlled opposition. Like, he's playing cover for Biden. Oh, Biden is the lesser evil. He's bad, but he's a lesser evil. RFK, oh, he's conspiracy theorist. Discard him. Get rid of him. He's not a serious candidate. Everything he says, everything Ben Burgess says, just screams to me controlled opposition. Don't take anything he says seriously. Take it with a grain of salt and just run the fuck away from him. That's just what I want to say about that.
I'm just wondering quickly, CJ, if you could share, when was this article published?
Oh, I think this is wait. Could have sworn
it was
yesterday.
Oh, in the past few days. Oh no, the Nation.
No, yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah, the Nations was last week. This was yesterday. Yeah.
Notice how they didn't mention Dr. West in this.
No.
So he's not even a consideration at all in this, because he's like running now as a Green potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm scrolling down to see if he does. I don't. Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't.
And I don't think that's by accident. In a sense, it's just like
they're definitely afraid of him. They're definitely afraid of. So that leads me to the question, and I'll answer this here, and all of you can chime in. It's my thinking that if Cornel West is in as a Green, he wins the nomination. That's what most people think is going to happen. And they are on, they're going to gradually be getting on a bunch of states. So then they hit 40. Like, what level of vote shaming? Like, this is them kind of soft pedaling these articles they've been putting out about him, kind of soft pedaling, like, hey guys, he shouldn't be doing this. He should be running. But as it gets closer, and then they're still doing the general election sort of polling, and it's going to keep showing that, Cornel West is at 7%, is at 8%. Like, can you even fathom or even imagine what sort of vote shaming levels we will be at for some of these people like Pod Save America?
I'm not. You know what? I'm actually, and I don't want to speak on this like in a theoretical sense, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to this experiment of having Cornel West run as a Green, because even just, and I know you played a clip of those two black pundits on, I guess it was MSNBC, who were commenting about they can go in. Neither one of them couldn't go in that hard on Dr. West because they have a lot of respect for him, and given the implications of what Cornel West or who his star power is within the black community, like, I think for a lot of black people, especially, and I thought about this yesterday, especially those who are boomers, like, because Cornel West, he's the philosopher, but he also has that, pastor, bent to him, which I know, especially within the black community, especially for the black boomer generation, that's kind of appealing. Hell, we have Pastor Raphael Warnock, in the Senate right now, and he's a pastor, so that's going to appeal to some, especially given that if the issue is if Dr. West is able to kind of go out there and really do enough rallies to make sure that he gets his name out there. But he already has that star power. And I think this might be intentional that Burgess may not have mentioned him, because especially within the black community, it's not to say that people wouldn't necessarily jump the gun and vote for him, but there would be some interest, I would imagine. There will be some pause as to, let me look at him and see what he's about. And that, I would imagine there will be enough interest within the black community to kind of pull some people away from the Democratic Party if that's the case. So I think
according to some polls, they've said that, and a couple of polls they've reported that the percentage that he pulls from the percentage of black voters they pull. So I'm saying pull and siphon. These are the words they're using. That he does is a higher percentage than any of the other groups.
And Democrats always rant and rave of how they need a black vote. So I think especially within that group, Dr. West has a huge advantage that, because Marianne and RFK, as Apollo said, when it's all said and gone, they're going to kiss Joe Biden's ass, come by this time next year. We know this. Dr. Cornel West doesn't have to, because he's running outside the duopoly. And I would argue, depending on how well he does, he's going to be more of a threat to the Democrats, especially within the black community, than the. So I think right now they're trying to downplay it a lot because they don't want people to really think of that possibility. But it'll be interesting to see come next year this time. Like, especially if Dr. West continues to grow his profile politically, he'll become more of a threat to the Democrats. And that actually might force them to change their rhetoric in terms of things that they say that they're going to do to try and keep as many black people in the Democratic Party as possible. So I think right now, this is on purpose that they can't go on West too hard, but they can't say him yet because
he's almost the perfect candidate. He's just about the perfect candidate for a third party that wants to begin a shift and scare the shit out of the establishment, because he and I'm using this language, he's almost unimpeachable publicly as far as his image, because they've had him on for so long on their own shows, praising him. Like almost every single person has been doing that, and it's in the interviews they kind of go, wow, where they're not even going hard at him, they're just kind of reporting this is what's going on, and they really not even like going at any sort of character sort of assassinations. And this is why I think they are really fearful, because if he's starting at 6%, it's only going to get higher. I think he could, in their own polling, get as high as maybe 9% if they're not lying, maybe 10% if they're not trying to skew it. It might even get as high as 10% in their own polling.
And with the added bonus for Dr. West that he's been on independent media too. Like, and I think especially knowing that he's being accountable to you and Nick, coming on regularly in RBN, you know, that's going to help him immensely. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Democrats in this case are going to do, because they can't go at it.
I think you're going to have to find a way to be careful that they don't try to get RBN off of YouTube. I can see that happening, you know, at some point in the future. I mean, we see it with other things. Just a couple of comments about the way they're framing RFK Jr. And the way they're ignoring Cornel West. That shows very clearly. It's Ben Burgess is the name of this.
Yes, that's the name of this writer.
That Ben Burgess and Jacobin are clearly an establishment outlet disguised as a progressive leftist outlet, because it's the subtlety of, oh, well, RFK Jr. and just saying he's widely derided. There's a thing that they do in the news business. Some would say it's a phrase they use often. You know, some would say, who's some?
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying it, and you're allowed to have an opinion. If he said, Ben Burgess is a coward and not a very honest journalist. If Ben Burgess was an honest journalist, he would say, here are the people who have called RFK Jr. a conspiracy theorist. Here's why. And there are receipts to back them up, or no, they're not. Like, that's what a reporter should do. Not just say somebody called someone a bad name and leave it at that and not name the names. Listen, I was accused early on of like, oh, you're supporting RFK Jr. And I'm like, listen, I haven't declared my support for anyone yet, except a few days ago. I just said, you know, I'm supporting Cornel West. So I am now. But RFK Jr. has some good points, especially about the Ukraine war. I'm glad he's there. I would like to see debates because I would like to see it discussed. I care about issues and policies being discussed. He has the ability to do it. He's a smart man. He's an environmental lawyer. He's done great things as an environmental activist and attorney. He deserves to be taken seriously. But why would they do this at the same time? And I'm not sure who, it might have been Apollo who pointed it out, that they didn't even mention Cornel West. I read another article, not by a leftist organization, but they didn't mention Cornel West either. And I think this is their way of trying to destroy Cornel West, just not even mentioning him. And what an affront and an assault when you look at what that man stands for. A living wage, people being treated decently in the workplace, people having livable communities, looking at a global working class, we all have something in common. The fact that he stands for these things and they're ignoring him, I think, is an assault on the working class. And it's really sad to see. And then to say that come on, talk about yellow journalism. RFK Jr. hangs out with unsavory characters. I mean, Joe Biden hangs out with unsavory characters. His son is Hunter, for the love of God. A crack smoking, lying on his gun application, sex worker crazed, who probably left cocaine at the White House.
Yes.
I mean, let's not talk about unsavory characters.
Wow. We have that story too. So we have a lot of stories that sort of intertwine today. They're all sort of like connected today. But go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
No, I have nothing else to say except it's all one big farm.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we started with the AOC and the Jacobin story, sort of saying the obvious, but the critique always falls short. So they just kind of point it out and then they go, that's not cancelable. Not that I'm using their words, but it's never a wow. You just disappoint me for the fifth time. I'm done. It's never an end. It's just an acknowledgement, maybe an acknowledgement, and this is what should happen, but it never materializes into anything. And then now we're kind of transitioning to Cornel West, and let's talk about Cornel West and also talk about what's happening to Joe Biden. Basically, he's not doing so well in the polls, and now that Dr. West is in the race along with RFK, they try to put him down. That's because they know he's doing well, 20% out of the primaries, and then you got Cornel West polling at 6% in the general. Spells all bad for a person that can barely speak because of his cognitive decline. So let's listen to this video here. This has been curated by Case Study QB. Shout out Case Study. This is CNN talking about Cornel West.
Mayor Bottoms, when you talk about the situation, obviously you've got Joe Manchin and Jonah mentioned RFK Jr., who's running in the primaries, but you've got a Green Party candidate who's going to be on that final ballot, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. The Green Party is a party. Cornel West. David Axelrod was saying he's worried about Cornel West. He believes that could cost Biden dearly, right? You just have to siphon off a few thousand votes in a few states. Do you worry that a progressive African-American candidate is going to appeal more to Black voters who have been cooling to Biden in recent polls? We see it in recent polls. Support for Biden among African Americans dropped from 84% in 2021. It's down to 56% early.
So this is the poll I was referencing. I was off my numbers. I think I said 86 and 53 or something like that. So I was off a little bit. But this is the poll that shows a decline, a near 30%. Was that 28? Yeah, 28% decline. And Black Biden approval numbers, which is shocking to them because, again, this is an indication that this may not be enough for them to win, or this is not enough for them to win. They literally, the 80s, when they were in the 80s at that time, they were saying that was low because it's typically they want it to be around 92%.
Right.
But they're saying this is low in the 80s, and now they wish they were in the 86s at this point. But anybody want to chime in here on this particular poll?
I would even argue 56%. Someone said in the chat that seems high to me.
That does seem high to me too. That does seem high to me too. And I'm talking about the people that are invested in politics, because again, 51% of Black people, or 50 plus people, percent of Black people don't even participate in electoral politics if you're looking at the entire population. But this seems a little high, even of the ones that's participating, because the conversations in the barbershops and the salons,
right,
in Black spaces, this not at all saying anything good about Joe Biden. I don't see it at all. And these are people that are liberal. These aren't even radical people that I'm talking about in the spaces that I go to. I don't hear anybody sort of talking in good language about Joe Biden. So
yeah, what happened between September 2021? I was saying, what happened between September 2021 and May 2023 that would have really impacted their
what happened?
What happened?
The pandemic.
Maybe the pandemic. Maybe maybe World War III, maybe something happened.
Maybe the idea that he promised HBCU students student loan debt cancellation, and that's
true.
Where's that? that might have something to do with it.
Oh
too.
yeah, the voting rights. Now we're not necessarily for the voting rights, but for what they were trying to project. Oh, we got this voting rights. They wouldn't even do that. They wouldn't even kill the filibuster for that. So there is a lot of disappointment, even in the liberal world. Not even people who will be radical like us. So, but let's listen a little more to this clip. We're about 25% of the way through. Let's listen. Now, what I did want to add here, you see the question asked, should we be afraid? They keep doing these segments where should we be afraid? It's like, they're either saying no or a little bit. Now, for me, it's not a coincidence they're asking this black lady, this particular black lady, this question, so she can come in and be like, no, you don't have to be afraid. So let's listen to what her reaction is, and then we will respond after.
In recent polls, support for Biden among African Americans dropped from 84% in 2021. It's down to 56% earlier this year. I mean, that's a stunning plunge.
Yeah, I'm more concerned, Aaron, about African American voters and voters in general staying at home than I am about a third party candidate. It's not ideal. Obviously, every single vote will matter. But what we are seeing are voters are becoming increasingly unhappy with elected officials. That's not particular to President Biden. But again, I believe that when the policies are focused on in the midst of a campaign, when people are reminded of how the American Rescue Plan Fund sent money to cities in Atlanta, it stopped us from having to furlough city employees. It allowed us to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. When these type policies, I think, are put in front of the voters at the height of a campaign, I'm less concerned about a third party candidate. Do I wish that there were not?
So the age old, just remind them what all the good stuff we've done for you sort of play, which to me, I don't know how that ever works to have to, you get what I'm saying? If what you're doing is a positive effect on me, I'm feeling it. I don't need to be told anything opposite. But if I'm feeling like I'm not ahead, that things are too expensive, reminding me of some legislation that obviously is not affecting me positively, I don't get how that helps them. And why do they think that's a good strategy?
This is Keisha Lance. I almost didn't recognize who she was, but it's in.
Wait, that's Keisha Lance. That's
yeah,
Keisha Lance brother?
Yeah. I almost didn't recognize her, but she has no right talking. Like, Cop City is happening in your city, girl. Like, you have no right to talk.
I did not recognize her. Yeah, of course she's gonna say something like this,
and of course they're gonna put her on the panel.
Yeah,
they're not gonna put somebody like India Moore,
Sabby, or India Moore, yeah.
India Watson from India Moore is a great actor. India Moore Watson from Buffalo, who was
Buffalo, yeah.
Out, she was the Democratic nominee, and the establishment went with the center right mayor who had lost the primary. They won't have her on. But I think there's a couple of things that need to be laid out, what they're missing or on purpose not saying. I'm not sure which, because they do have blinders, right? So sometimes they just don't see it, but sometimes they see it and ignore it on purpose, like with Cornel West. The thing that I think is important to note is that, okay, so say the poll is correct. It is as high as 50%, 6% of the whatever the black community they're going to call those that they polled approve of Biden. That is historically low for a Democrat, and that spells trouble. That's like he's approaching Pete Buttigieg numbers, like he's going down, topping 30, who's a vile racist, Pete Buttigieg. He just, the way he treated black people in in Indiana. But here's the thing. The thing they're ignoring is a lot. In 2016, this happened. I brought this up last time I was on. Historically, significantly lower voter turnout in mostly black districts for the presidential election in 2016. They stayed home because as some said that were interviewed in that article about Milwaukee, where they said, neither one does anything for us. Why should I bother voting? So there is that. And why would they think it? And it's if the Democrats are going to trot out Biden's accomplishments, what we need to do is, and I hope Cornel West can do this as well, is list the things the Democrats could have done but decided not to. So let's go to student loans, because yes, SCOTUS sucks. We have a horrible Supreme Court right now. It never should have come to that. Are people going to focus on the fact that in the debt ceiling negotiations, which were completely unnecessary, they did not have to happen, Democrats with the majority could have codified into law a massive debt ceiling that they know that they're never going to go over in the next 20 years. So we never needed to have this, that the government would always be fully funded. They decided not to do it. Their reason, Dick Durbin said this, was we're too busy. We have other things to do. This is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then why does that matter? Because in the debt ceiling negotiations, Joe Biden bargained away the student debt pause, knowing full well the Supreme Court may overturn it. So now he can't even say, listen, I don't agree with the court's ruling. It's horrible, but I'm going to extend the pause to the end of my presidency. And if you reelect me, I'm going to keep extending it. That's 6 more years. He could do it.
Or even now, he could say, pay student loans, but no interest.
Right.
At bare minimum.
Do both those things. He could have done that. It was in his power not to bargain that away. Why does this matter, or should it, or could it matter to Black voters? Because Black Americans are more likely to drop out of a 4-year college because of cost. They can't afford it because whether it's books or living or whatever, these are widely presented statistics. It affects women. It affects marginalized populations like Black Americans. So he could have done it and didn't. What else could they have done? Anything Democrats wanted to do that has to do with the budget, Medicare for all, or even the stupid public option, a living wage of at least 15, but I think we should say this later. We need to start never saying the word 15 anymore. We are demanding 25 or 30 and bargaining down to 25. They could have done that through reconciliation. Reconciliation requires zero, at the time, required 0 Republican votes. If Biden wanted to whip his party and corral them to push his agenda, he would have done everything in his power to get Manchin and Sinema, who was a Democrat at the time, Sinema, online. They could have carved out the filibuster for the minimum wage. They could have carved out the filibuster for the Voting Rights Act. Are you going to tell me Manchin and Sinema aren't going to be able to be corralled at least on the Voting Rights Act? He didn't do it. The Democrats don't care about Black voters, and let it not be lost on people that so many Americans, poor Americans, and members of the Black community have been disenfranchised from voting because of Joe Biden's white supremacist bill of 1994. All they needed to do was carve out the filibuster to allow voting rights to be a simple majority with Kamala Harris as the tie vote. They knew they had the power and decided not to because they don't want to do it.
Right.
We can go down the list of things Democrats could have after the Supreme Court knocked down the CDC's extension of the eviction moratorium. The CDC said if Congress passes a law, that's fine, but the CDC doesn't have the purview to do this. Democrats didn't even put it up for a vote because key Democrats are paid off by the commercial real estate lobby and did not want, and the full real estate lobby did not want to extend the eviction moratorium. It would have lost in the House, not the Senate, on a vote when Democrats had full control of the House. We can go down the list. So my question is, why would anybody in a marginalized group vote for Joe Biden or a Democrat when we can go down the list of all the things Democrats could have done, should have done? And one other example, East Palestine. Now that's a mostly white area. Their lives have been ruined. Their entire town was victimized by a company that, according to reporting, and whoever reports it good, I thank them. Jordan Sheridan from Status Quo has done some excellent on-the-ground reporting in East Palestine. And he's interviewed people and dug into why is it they did this so-called controlled burn. And the answer is they didn't need to do it. It wasn't controlled, which was a really big thing that he came out with. They just haphazardly burned it, and they knew that it was poison. They did it to quickly get the trains running so they didn't lose money. Now, Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg together have control, have enough power where they could put regulations in place without Congress that would have will prevent another East Palestine train derailment disaster from happening. They could do that. They're not. They punted to Congress knowing the Republicans were taking over soon. This is probably not going to happen. If it does, it'll be extremely watered down. So we can go down the list of every point where Democrats could have acted, had the power to act, should have acted, and decided not to, and did not even need the Republicans to do it. So my question is, why would any marginalized group or group affected by their horrendous policies even think of voting for them? And that's not discussed. The case against the Democrats is that, I think, to sum it up, Joe Biden is the face of it. They are a feckless, false opposition to the Republicans. When Democrats have power, they never use it. Unless it's to raise the military budget, to give $37 billion more to police. This mayor of Atlanta, Bottoms, to allow Cop City to go through. They'll use their power to do horrible things that hurt the working class, hurt the Black community, but they never stick their neck out. What they will do is run on all these things again. So just for people to recap this, it's important that they get it. Nothing the Democrats say now matters for two reasons. They had 2 years in the majority to get anything done that they wanted to get done, and they could have. They could have extended that child tax credit permanently. They could have made that permanent. They decided not to. That was a democratically written bill. Now that the Republicans are in charge of the House, nothing of a progressive agenda is going to get through. So anything Democrats say about what they want to do now, it's a lie because they can't do it. They had 2 years and they blew it. And then if they're saying they're going to do it, notice what they're not saying. Don't believe them because campaign promises are bullshit. Democrats prove to us they will lie to get votes from marginalized communities. I will give you free community college, and then, sorry, you don't get free community college. I'll give you a public option. By the way, another Black issue, Black Americans are more likely to be uninsured than white Americans. Where's Medicare for all? We're not even going to talk about it. The squad's not even mentioning it anymore. So notice, though, they're not saying if we win in 2024, if we win the White House and you give us a solid majority, we will raise your wage. And the last thing I'll say about the wage is they've done polling in the past few months showing that a solid majority of Americans, including Republicans, believe the minimum a majority believe the minimum wage should be well over $20 an hour. In fact, most Democrats, or a significant amount of Democrats, think it should be $28 an hour. A significant number of Republicans think it should be $25 an hour. Democrats aren't promising any of that. So why would anyone vote for them.
I don't get it. I don't get why people still are supporting him, but it is our job to keep pointing that fact out. Let me play a little more, but it puts into context that we now know who this is. I mean, I see it on the screen, but I was just listening to the answer. I didn't even pay attention to the name. Keisha Lance Bottom, the Cop City sort of started under her when she was running the city. So she is terrible to be answering this question. But this is the Black people they want to answer this question that will make sure they give a right answer. So let's finish out her answer. 20 more seconds.
A third party candidate, certainly. Cornel West has a lot of respect, not just in the African American community, but across the country. So do I wish that he were not a candidate? I certainly do, because we know that the margins will be thin, but I'm still very confident that President Biden will be reelected.
Yeah. All right. So let's move to the next video. Go ahead if somebody wanted to chime in before this next video.
She had to say that with the straightest of face and just like monotonous robot, just being like, I am confident that President Joe Biden will win. And
yeah. All right. So let's listen to this one. This is Bacardi Sellers and another. Now remember this guy on the right.
Today, CJ.
Yeah, exactly. Now remember this guy on the right turned out to be, he is a donor for the rail industry that with what's happening in East Palestine. This guy right here. Okay. He's one of the lobbyists, I should say. He lobbied for the company, the literal company that's involved in this. He was one of the lobbyists at the time. Now he's in CNN contributor. He was on a panel talking about this, and they didn't disclose he was one of the lobbyists for it until it came out, and then they had to admit it. So let's listen to what they're saying about third parties in general. They kind of talk about Cornel West a little bit, but this is about more fear of what's going to happen if Joe Biden can win this next election.
Senator Manchin says this New Hampshire appearance is not necessarily about running as a third-party candidate, but you heard the language. He's not ruling it in. He's not ruling it out. What do you think? How concerned should Biden be?
Well, I think the Democratic Party and Joe Biden should be extremely concerned, but this is really just an exercise in futility. This is an exercise in arrogance. This is an exercise in a false sense of self. Many of these individuals who are running in third parties, including Senator Manchin, I mean, we have a big tent. We want Senator Manchin to be the senator from West Virginia, but actually teasing and wanting people to adore you or ridicule you or be a part of this discussion for President of the United States, that it's really only arrogance. Joe Biden has a successful tenure going as president. I think everybody should get behind him and support him. The Joe Manchins, the Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s, the Cornel West, they're all in the same bucket. And they are just running either to be here with David and I as political commentators or to try to find some exit ramp.
Senator Manchin.
Yes.
So what's the implication Cornel West Dr. West and Bakari? Are you going to say the same thing about him?
I think he put him in the same boat. He said they're in the same boat. Cornel West, along with Joe Manchin and RFK. Like, I guess he's trying to say this is a vanity thing for Cornel West. It seems, but I mean, it's Bakari Sellers. He's willing to sell out. So he's a sellout himself. So, but let's continue and then get through some of these videos here.
David, Democrats have been worried for quite some time about the potential for this group, No Labels, to play a spoiler role in 2024, splitting the Democratic vote, even just enough of the Democratic vote. Let's say they take 5% of it for Manchin if he runs, and which would hand the election theoretically to Trump or DeSantis. Former Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, David, told the Washington Post that concern is much ado about nothing. He said, quote, "The last thing that this group wants to do is be known as the group that elected Donald Trump." And I just scratched my head at the Democrats having their hair on fire about this. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I don't think that, I think Senator Corker may be underestimating the No Labels, the seriousness of their efforts and undertaking. If you listen to them talk and hear them, they're out to get on every ballot and every state in the union to have ballot access, which as you know is no mean feat. And if they do so, it will really impact this election. As you noted, this is going to be an extremely close race. Let's just assume that it's President Biden versus President Trump. It'll be an extremely close race, 1 point or 2 points either direction. And having a third-party candidate in the race could affect the outcome either direction. Although with Senator Manchin getting in the race, a Democrat, it would probably draw more votes from the Democratic side of the aisle. So it is a cause for concern if you're on the Democratic ticket. If you're President Trump or Ron DeSantis or Chris Christie or anybody else running, I think you'd be, you're kind of encouraging the run.
This pointless dribble. I don't understand why does this guy on the right get an invitation, a former donor, a former lobbyist? Why is he regularly like a person to be there to be talking about politics when he has such a background as sort of in the cesspool of Washington, D.C.?
I think that's it. He's a donor and a lobbyist. So isn't that really all you need in this day and age in order to get on these mainstream networks?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That's a good point. Because it just seems weird, but it makes me think that there's he's not the only one. Like I mean, we know this, and by the way, we know this by here's another one. He's a former lobbyist too. This is DNC chair Jamie Harrison. Let's hear him talk about the same sort of, Biden issue, RFK and Cornel West. So let's listen to what is said when he went on the Jen Psaki show. So let's listen.
There is another state where a number of elected officials have been displeased, I think it's safe to say, about the change in the primary calendar, and that is New Hampshire. They have said they will vote first anyway, which could, of course, set up a scenario where President Biden is not on the ballot there, and a candidate like RFK Jr., who has started a campaign blitz in the state, also has spread conspiracy theories, but seems to have made, at least in some polls, whether they're legit or not, some headway among Democratic primary voters. So 2 questions here. One is New Hampshire. How concerned are you about the impact this could have on November 2024 and that state that Democrats need to win in November? And then I also want to ask you about RFK Jr. and what you do if he ends up winning that state in the primary.
Listen, New Hampshire is a very, very important state, but for 50 years, New Hampshire and Iowa and New Hampshire have kicked off the presidential primary process. And the Democratic Party is a very different party than it was 50 years ago. We're a much more diverse party than we are. And so there's no state that has an ownership for how we kick this off.
That was bad. Yeah, we're going to have to rewind that. Like it's getting worse and worse. And I'll put this out to the panel if anybody wants to respond. It's like it feels to me like all of this propaganda has always been going on, but it feels to me it's way more transparent and comical now. Like the people who are playing the actors is much more transparent. That this is sort of a rehearsed sort of dance that you guys are doing, that you guess you're bringing on. You already kind of know what they're going to say. You already know they're going to be sort of getting the same sort of line that you're pushing. You just came out of the White House that you're now reporting on. Like, it seems so very like, what is that? Game. I forget that. Anyway, I forget the movie reference. It seems so transparent. And I just don't know, does anybody else feel that way where it seems like, man, this is so comical, like something will be on SNL? Anybody?
Oh, Anthony, you're on mute.
I was
you're on mute.
In my head, yeah, this guy's a clown. Like, that's his only thing. When he said, we all felt it when he said the Democratic Party of today is much different than the Democratic Party of 50 years ago. We're all lamenting that. because it wasn't perfect then, but it was far better than it was now. It was before the neoliberals took over, or most of them. Look, they only have on people that are going to talk within the little box of what's accepted. Noam Chomsky talked about this years ago and said that one of the reasons he doesn't do mainstream television is they don't give him enough time to talk about, to really take an issue apart. So he'll end up sounding crazy. So they only let the people that are crazy in, who just repeat the same things. How does the Democratic Party being more diverse put food on people's table right now, today? Oh, by the way, inflation isn't down. The CPI, food is up 3%. Rent is up almost 9%. 9% over last year. That's not down. That's a third of your literal income. Car insurance is up. Car maintenance is up. I don't care. And a marginalized person, working class with the family, does not care how diverse the party is. And that's a lie. It's not diverse because they have very few, if any, working class people among their ranks. It's not just skin color, ethnic heritage, religion, etc. It's also income. They're mostly millionaires. So that's a lie. It's just, and of course Jen Psaki accepts it. Nice haircut, Jen, by the way. I like what she did with it. Just seriously, it looks good.
I mean, does anybody really think that Jen Psaki would have that position if she wasn't a former White House? What was she, a press secretary or whatever the fuck she was?
Yeah.
I mean, so she tailored her audience to, she tailored her attendance to be people like Jamie Harrison and these motherfuckers that would toe the party line and just spread their bullshit propaganda to their brainless fucking audience. Like, we all know how this game is played. I mean, we're just seeing a skit played out, like that's pre-written by whoever's in charge, and they're regurgitating it on camera for the audience to see. Like it's like we're seeing a little TV show that's pre-scripted, pre-run. Like nothing they say is genuine. Nothing they say is like in any way going to help.
Like the Truman Show.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to help the American electorate make any sound decision in whatever they want to make. Because notice how Jamie Harrison didn't even address the question that Jen Psaki posed to him. It was something about RFK. I forgot the question now at this point, but it was something about RFK, and he never even addressed it. So like, we're just seeing like an act playing out. That's all it is.
Yeah, and she's just she just doesn't come across as believable in her propaganda. But let's try to get through it. We stopped like 10 seconds in. Let's see how far we can get through the video. It's 2 minutes. Let's listen.
There is another state where a number of elected officials have been displeased, I think it's safe to say, about the change in the primary calendar, and that is New Hampshire. They have said they will vote first anyway, which could, of course, set up a scenario where President Biden is not on the ballot there, and a candidate like RFK Jr., who has started a campaign blitz in the state, also has spread conspiracy theories, but seems to have made, at least in some polls, whether they're legit or not, some headway among Democratic primary voters. So 2 questions here. One is New Hampshire. How concerned are you about the impact this could have on November 2024 and that state that Democrats need to win in November? And then I also want to ask you about RFK Jr. and what you do if he ends up winning that state in the primary.
Listen, New Hampshire is a very, very important state, but for 50 years, New Hampshire and Iowa and New Hampshire have kicked off the presidential primary process. And the Democratic Party is a very different party than it was 50 years ago. We're a much more diverse party than we are. And so there's no state that has an ownership for how we kick this off. Now, the one thing I often correct my friends in New Hampshire in, that they love to say that they're the first, but they're actually the second. They've always been the second contest. Iowa, then New Hampshire. Well, the only thing that has changed this time around, they will still be the second contest, but it's South Carolina, then New Hampshire and Nevada following up. And so, the president is going to still compete in New Hampshire in the general election, and we're giving New Hampshire as much time as they need in order to figure out their primary process. But the bottom line is this, Jen. South Carolina is the official first in the primary state for the DNC going in the 2024 election cycle.
So they're not backing down on this democracy thing. Now, but I mean, I know it could be a cover that they're using, that they're trying to say, oh, it's more diverse, so we're trying to, we all know that they could be using identity politics as a cover or something that could be considered as, reasonable, that, hey, yeah, this kind of reflects the population more, but we know that that's not what they're using it for. But what say you about sort of their usage of it, even though that's not what they actually believe in? I think this is what sort of dumbed downs identity politics, is that it's supposed to represent something good, but they're kind of just co-opting it. Go ahead, Colin.
It's really sad, considering that what Jamie wanted to say is it's more diverse in terms of what they believe is going to benefit them the most in this upcoming election, because Biden is so terrible. They're not saying that Biden didn't win Iowa and New Hampshire in 2020. In Iowa, they're saying that Buttigieg won, but we know he cheated, but essentially Bernie won. But Biden was scored very low in both of those primaries. It was only once he got to South Carolina in 2020 that he actually won that, thanks to Jim Clyburn. So they're banking on the fact that, and actually that says a lot of how much disdain, that in a sense, that they have for the Black community, especially the Black boomer community in South Carolina, that they're banking on the fact all these fools are going to vote for Biden anyway, because all Jim Clyburn has to do is just say, vote for Joe Biden, and they will just listen to him, and everyone will just be like, okay, I'm going to vote for Biden because you said so, sir. So it just kind of gives that, but in a way, I can only fault ourselves in a sense, because we know of our reality, and I get we're kind of force-fed this idea of a binary view in politics is either either blue or red. And we're not necessarily thinking, I think we are, or at least the younger generations now are beginning to think having more alternative means of getting involved in politics, but especially for, the boomer generation, they're kind of stuck in that binary mindset. So the idea that since they've kind of grown up with the Democratic Party essentially all their lives, and it's kind of more traditional within the Black community to vote Democrat, to go against that is almost kind of like a slap in the face in terms of the culture, so to speak. So I feel Jamie is trying to use that to his advantage, but in the guise of saying, oh, we want it to be more diverse. No, it's just the idea it's all Black people that will vote for Biden. So in your mind, it's a shoo-in. So because they're not going to be, I just feel like this is kind of his way, without saying, they're not going to be politically cautious, I would say, in terms of they just know, oh, he's the Democratic nominee, I'm just going to vote for him. So it's just kind of, so almost kind of like you see somewhat the class level in terms of that disdain, but also kind of in a way the intelligence of Black people in a way, because it's just kind of like, oh, these fools are just going to vote regardless. So because
that is the feeling. That's the sort of the same sort of feeling I get too. It's just it's expectation, and it kind of connects to what the professor was saying about the abusive relationship. Seems to be sort of long-standing with the Black community, this abusive relationship with the Democratic Party. We the ones that keep coming back, and that is most depended upon, at least in the latest election. So, to the point that you're making, let's finish this video so we can get Jay's gonna be leaving in a few minutes here. I want to get his final opinions on this. So I'm gonna play it all the way through. This is only a minute and a half, 90 seconds here. Let's watch it.
And what about RFK Jr.? I mean, it's New Hampshire where he's making a play. He's out there appearing on a range of right-wing outlets. He's spreading conspiracy theories. The DNC has endorsed Joe Biden, but he has made some headway, at least in some polls. So what are you going to do about RFK Jr.?
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue to make sure that the American people, and particularly Democrats, understand how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have delivered for them. When I think back on this presidency, and I think back to what President Biden has done in the first 2 years, with a 50-50 Senate on a good day and less than a 5-seat majority in the House, the next presidential term that I think about LBJ. I mean, this has been one of the most successful presidencies in my lifetime. Starting with the American Rescue Plan, to the Inflation Reduction Act, to the Infrastructure Bill, to the CHIPS Act, to all of these things that we have done, transforming the judiciary. I mean, putting almost 50 of the 100 judges, African-American and African-American women, more African-American women on the appellate court than any presidency, all presidencies combined. And I can go on and on how beneficial this presidency has been to the American people. The reason why we go to the polls to vote for president is to get stuff done. Well, tell me what president in my lifetime, in our lifetime, have gotten more done with almost less than Joe Biden has.
DNC Chairman Jamie Harrison, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
That was just ominous. That was terrible. Man, but Jay, let's get Jay in here. Anything part, you don't have to just say chime in on the video, but anything you wanted to chime in on before you're gonna be leaving here pretty soon. But that was hard to get through there.
I'll say this: he's getting his money's worth. I will say that.
But go
what
ahead,
tangible
Apollo.
achievement? Okay.
Oh God!
Do you guys know
terrible.
who Milo Yiannopoulos is? He's this gay conservative guy. He's kind of an old name now, but he's a gay conservative, and he was one of the guys that said, "Oh, hey, gay conversion therapy worked for me. I'm no longer gay anymore." So he was pandering to that right-wing audience, and that's kind of what Jamie Harrison's doing here. He's just getting like, "Oh, there's a few more black people on the on the federal court seats."
Yes.
Did they improve the lives of black people anyway? No. I mean, I can't really speak on that, but I don't think they did. That's what I can say. He's just pandering to those identity politics talking points. Like yeah,
it was
bad. What did he do to like materially improve the lives of not just African Americans, but like anybody in America? Like this was pretty much Democrats' wet dream. Like that's what that was.
Yeah.
Identity politics without any substance. That's all that was. Like he was a perfect audience for the perfect guest for a Jen Psaki show. You know, like that's the kind of shit that her audience would eat up very easily.
Yeah.
What would you say about that? Like, some jokes and some bullshit just writes itself, and that's what that was. Like,
this almost kind of contradicts what AOC was saying, because she was like, "Oh, we couldn't get much done because of the Senate," but now Jamie Harrison said, "Oh, look, we got this done." So, which is it?
Yeah.
So, but they unified on the Biden now. You know, so it just shows the bullshit right here. But I mean, but we expect this from he's the NDC chair, so he's going to say whatever he needs to say to get his point. He's going to say whatever he needs to say to ensure that Biden doesn't look bad. So this is kind of, on par of what we expect. So this is no surprise from me.
Yeah, he's behind the decision to not hold any primary debates. Like he's
Right.
a DNC person. But let's give Jay. Jay has to take off right now. Jay, any final words before you take off?
I mean, I'm good for the moment right now. Sorry guys, I really gotta go back.
Yeah, he gotta get back to work. But
had a fun panel. It was great being on the show with you guys, and I'll see you guys later. All right, peace out.
All right, Jay, I'll put you in the back, sir. So yeah, thanks. And we only got one more story before we take off, and that's the Epstein story. We gotta cover that story. But what's say any final words on this topic before we move on? And we covered a lot on this one. We covered all of AOC. We covered the polls. We covered Cornel West, and then just sort of what they're saying about the reason about why Joe Biden is doing bad. So we've been covering a lot of different things in this first sort of second 2/3 of the show. And we're going to be moving on to Epstein. But any final words on these topics, gentlemen?
Yeah, if I could just say quickly, this is what the media, the Democratic Party aligned media, is doing is propaganda. And one of the foundational tactics of propaganda is to repeat a lie often enough so that it becomes true or it feels true. And the economy, most Americans do not think the country is headed in the right direction. These are polls within the past 4 weeks. Most Americans don't feel confident about the economy. Most Americans give Joe Biden very low marks on the economy, like I think down in the 30% area, right?
Like that.
So those are just like the hardcore Democrats and a couple of people that just don't pay attention or have tons of money and don't care. Because when's the last time they had to go to scan groceries at a checkout? They hire people to do that. They repeat the lie over and over. Let's run on the economy. Bidenomics, it's great. And I have a couple of figures here from if you unpack the latest numbers. I made a note to myself. Rent is up. Oh, it's not almost 9, but it's over 8. Rent is up 8.3% over this time last year. Food is up 3% over this time last year. Car maintenance is up 13%. You're working class, by the way, just so you know. You cannot afford a car. You can't buy new. Has anyone tried to buy a pre-owned vehicle lately? They're thousands of
prices
dollars.
are crazy.
And so people are like, "Oh, you have I have a 2013 Kia, which I got. I bargained for that. I pushed them to the lowest price possible. So I'm holding on to it. I could get a lot of money for it. It's in really good shape, but I can't buy anything. So if you're working class, you can't afford car maintenance. That's up 13%. If you want one of the simple luxuries of life, like you want to go out to dinner with your family once a month, which is a nice thing for anybody to be able to do in the working class, if they can, eating out is up 7%. And the Democrats are going to run on the economy. People's lives are worse economically. And here's another thing. When people say, well, you can't blame Joe Biden for inflation. Okay, I think you kind of can, but let's at least go here. We can blame him and the Democrats for not giving us any cash relief during inflation, for letting the child tax credit end during inflation, for kicking people off of Medicaid and SNAP when inflation was at a 40-year high. They didn't give us cash relief. So they repeat this lie over and over. The economy's good. Why would Cornel West be running if the economy's good? Why would RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson? This is just silly. Biden's got a great record. Biden has a horrendous record. It is not the best since LBJ had a war on poverty and significantly reduced the percentage of people below the federal poverty level, which is always way too low. Anyway, he did that. He was bad for a whole bunch of reasons, but he did that. He Medicare, we can go down the list of what he did. And then Richard Nixon did the EPA. I mean, he was kind of a horrible person.
Yeah.
Good things. He was to the left of most Democrats today. So to say the lie, and I think what's happening is the reason Biden is polling at 56% with Black Americans as far as approvals go, the reason is they're not dumb. They know they're struggling, and there's no acknowledgement. And another thing about the cash relief, just because the metrics are better, and they are better now than they were a year ago. They're better than they were a year ago in some aspects. Just because it's come down a bit, all the money the working class, that additional money they had to spend just to live, is gone. Their savings are gone. All that when gas was $5 a gallon and they had to get to work.
Yeah.
You just saw what Jay's boss did to him. Apollo had to go to work, and maybe I don't know if they were called in when they thought they didn't have to be there, but you can't be late. You lose your job. If you lose your job, you lose your health care, because Democrats sure as hell aren't going to give us Medicare for all. So the pressure was on people. They had to pay $5 or more if you're in California a gallon for gas. That money's gone. It'll never come back. Just lowering inflation isn't enough. People should have gotten $2,000 individual per person monthly checks from March of 2020. They know they could have done it. Other countries did it. The United States, the richest country in the world, decided not to. The Democrats, who are a feckless opposition to the Republicans, didn't even propose it. So that propaganda that gets repeated over and over, I don't think it's working, because these numbers are not lying. That's my response to it.
Yeah, sorry for that. If you heard, I bumped my daughter playing outside my door here. But let's dive into the final story, because we're getting close. Sabby and JB show will be on in 25 minutes, so we will be off. We'll do this last segment for about 10 minutes, but it's an important story to cover, and it's being reported by Middle East. Let me bring it up before I give it a quote here. Middle East Monitor. I said Middle East Eye earlier, so MiddleEastMonitor.com. And here is the headline. Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing politicians for Israel's Mossad. New book confirmed. So we're gonna read. This is a short article, so we're gonna read pretty much like 2 long paragraphs. We'll read all of it and then comment. But let's start here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. The deceased American financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell were Israeli spies who used underage girls to blackmail politicians into giving information to Israel, according to their alleged Mossad handler. The couple reportedly ran a honey trap operation in which they provided young girls to prominent politicians from around the world for sex, and then used the incidents to blackmail them in order to attain information for Israeli intelligence. The claims are being made by the alleged former Israeli spy Ari Ben Minash in a soon-to-be released book, Epstein: Dead Men Tell No Tales, in which he said that he was the handler of Ghislaine father's Robert Maxwell, who was an Israeli espionage agent, and one of who introduced his daughter and Epstein to Mossad. Wow, this is this new information, Anthony? Is this new information to you that you've never heard of before?
Well, the documentation is new, but this has been rumored for quite a while. Whitney Webb does a lot of unpacking on this if people want to check her out. She's an author who's extensively dove into the Epstein issue and the connections to intelligence around the world. We knew there were connections between Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, and Israeli government and intelligence. So this isn't a shock, but what it looks like, and I'll have to unpack it and read it, is that more evidence is coming out. I mean, and if people want to know why the little black book is not of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is not being made public, this is exactly why. And just so you know, the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, was close with Jeffrey Epstein. He's probably in the book. I don't know. Allegedly. You know, and you've got Bill Clinton flying on the Lolita Express and being identified as having been at the island in the company of young girls by victims and groundskeepers. You've got Donald Trump hanging out with him. Like, this is the Murder on the Orient Express. I don't want to ruin the ending if anyone's never read or seen the movie with Agatha Christie, but it's like everybody was involved. That's what's going on here. But the ties with Israeli intelligence, you know, if you read Ronan Farrow's expose of the Harvey Weinstein issue, I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a fantastic book. He was chased by the Mossad when he was trying to out Weinstein and as a rapist. So, you know, it is said allegedly that the Mossad uses, you know, it's like a honey trap. They use these things to get info on people to get them to do what they need to do. And listen, this doesn't represent all people in Israel. I mean, Netanyahu's government, Netanyahu is the Trump of the Middle East. He's a horrible right-wing conservative racist, you know, and it is not reflective of all that. There's a peace movement in Israel that we never hear about, interestingly. Yeah. But so, yeah, that's a big deal, because to have all these powerful people connected to a known child sex trafficker and none of them to be charged, if this alleged link were true to Israeli intelligence, that also means they're connected with U.S. intelligence and other nations as well, most likely. If that's true, that clearly explains why the press is no longer talking about it, why no politicians in either party, save for a few of the Republicans who every now and then they'll say something correct, but they're not doing it. And like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's kind of a nut, you know, more than kind of, I think. But the victims too, you wonder, like, it's so scary for them. I heard a woman recently talk about this. This had happened to her 30 years ago, and she gave a press conference last year, and she said, "My life has been ruined. I have serious trauma." So the likelihood that a victim is going to risk more trauma in their life. Catch and Kill. That was the name of the book, where he was chased by Israeli intelligence. But do you think these victims, he at least has money and the protection of whatever he had going for him at the time, publishing company, or the New York Times, wherever he was working, New Yorker, right? But these women don't have anybody protecting them. And if any of them mysteriously killed themselves, God forbid, like, this is how it goes. And this isn't conspiracy theory. This literally is, my thing is, if you want conspiracy theories to go away, liberals, media, come out with the information you have.
Yeah, to come out with the truth.
There just real quickly, there was an ABC news reporter, a woman caught on a hot mic, saying when the Epstein story broke, she was pissed off because she had the goods on Epstein like a year or two prior. She goes, "We had the goods on Epstein. Our bosses wouldn't let us run it. Why?" And she said, "We had everything. We had photographs. We had pictures of Bill Clinton." And then you never heard it again. It was a hot mic. It's on YouTube. So there must be some powerful folks who don't want this revealed. I'm stating the obvious. And if it was a link like to the Mossad, that makes perfect sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me continue to read here so we can get out of here in a little bit. This is a quote. C, I'll just say effing around is not a crime. It could be embarrassing, but it's not a crime, is what the book wrote. But effing a 14-year-old girl is a crime, and he was taking photos of politicians effing 14-year-old girls. If you want to get it straight, that's Epstein and Maxwell, would just blackmail people like that. And then it goes on to say, Israel's Barack, U.S. sex trafficking suspect Epstein ties exposed. The handler, and his name is Ben Manash himself,
right.
an Iran-born Israeli businessman who says he worked for Mossad from 1977 to 87, is a mysterious figure who was arrested in 1989 in the U.S. on charges of arms dealing. He was acquitted in 1990, however, only after a jury accepted that he was acting on behalf of the Israeli state. Israel then denied that Manash, has any link with its intelligence service and attempted to distance itself from him, despite the fact that other news reports, both in the U.S. and Israel, confirmed he was acting on the country's behalf. The new book, which also speculates that Maxwell may have worked for other governments as a double or triple agent, says that despite reports of Epstein and Ghislaine met in the early 1990s in New York, they in fact met earlier through her father, who introduced Epstein to Mossad before Ghislaine joined in the activities later. Epstein, who was facing charges for sex trafficking minors, was found dead in his New York prison cell on August 10th. According to official reports, he committed suicide, but there has been much speculation and evidence put forward that he was in fact killed, with many stating he may have been assassinated due to his knowledge of figures he blackmailed and the acts they committed. And I think we can stop here. But your thoughts, we'll go to Colin about this information in this report. Like Anthony said, it's been kind of rumored. I don't know if I've ever actually seen reporting on it in this way, but what say you, sir?
Assuming that all of this is true, and again, this is speculation at this point, let's kind of make this clear, but
absolutely.
Assuming this is true, this could answer the question why politicians are so tepid about their support for Palestine. Because if
that's a good point.
If they know, especially a lot of these politicians are doing whatever deviousness, in regards to Epstein, and Israel basically has that bag to be like, oh, we know what you're doing, so do what we want if you don't want this information to get out. That, I feel like, could be a reason why there is such a huge pro-Israeli sentiment within our United States government that they will support Israel in whatever they need. So that's kind of what I was thinking in terms of this. And I think even, for the progressives in office, I can't argue that I think the implications are just so bad in our government that I want to assume that even our progressives probably don't have anything to do with this ring. But I think that lobby and just this kind of corruption is just so strong that even they will not touch it. And I think even as far as going to say that they will support Palestine could mean implications even in this. But I think especially given politicians who were involved, this would out them out directly in terms of, okay, you say you want us to keep quiet about this, then do what we want in terms of, Israel and their government.
Absolutely. Any final words on this story? If not the final words on the story, we can also give our closing remarks for the stream so we can get out of here before the Stabby and JB show. But let's go to Anthony for your closing remarks on the story and closing remarks for the stream, sir.
Jeffrey Epstein, I think, represents that story, the biggest example that you were either that there is an elite, that they do terrible things, especially to working class people, and it's reflected in their policies. So say like you're a Hakeem Jeffries, who I would think has no association with these people. His party does. So he is invested in, you don't want your party to look bad. I mean, if it was just the Republicans and just Trump, by the way, it should still come out. Of course, the Democrats would be all over this, but it's not. It would make their party look bad. One other thing. One of the reasons I get a lot of garbage online because I talk about my employment at Columbia and Adelphi, right? It's part of my identity. I'm proud of the work I do as a social work instructor and professor. One of the reasons I do it is because the liberal class usually holds those things up and says, somebody from Columbia said this. So I'm like, yeah, I'm from Columbia and I'm saying this. The other thing is, I worked for major nonprofits in New York. And one of the trainings I went to a bunch of trainings from the Department of Justice on human trafficking, on domestic violence, on child abuse. The Department of Justice did a training in Suffolk County a few years back that I attended on strangulation, because that is one of the most heinous and deadly things an abuser can do to their victim in a domestic violence situation is strangle them. And this was before Epstein's death. And very clearly they said one of the easiest ways for a coroner to determine strangulation is if the hyoid bone is broken. It's a U-shaped bone at the top of the neck. If that bone is, because if you look at it, somebody comes at you like this, they're more likely to fracture or break it. That bone was broken in Jeffrey Epstein. The likelihood that it was broken due to self-inflicted means is little to none. So I believe, based on my training from the United States government, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, they fucking strangled it, right? None of and the videotapes were off. There's a whole thing. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is information being withheld. But you have to think, people with this much money and power, if they think raping, where do you get to the point where you're just like, I'm so bored with my life, let's rape 11-year-old. It boggles the mind. And the answer is, people would rather not think these are the people running the world. Sadly, some of them are running the world. And it's reflected in their policies. If you would do that or cover up for somebody who does it, you're not going to care if a struggling family can't afford to pay their rent, because you don't have empathy. You see people in the working class as objects and props. And it's a sick thing. Hopefully somebody has the information and it'll leak out at some point. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're keeping Assange in jail. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? But final words for the stream. When is your next appearance? If you have any next appearances, please announce those. Announce your, I guess, Twitter handle, and let people know where they can find you. Colin, we'll start with you. Final words. Where can people see you?
You can find me and the rest of personalities at INN Indie News Network at indienews.network. You could find me on Twitter at Obona_Colin. That's OGBONNA_Colin with 2 L's. And you can find me on YouTube on INN News with my partner, Brief Breland, Wednesday nights at 9 Eastern Standard Time.
Awesome. And then, Professor, what say you? You have any other appearances on the horizon? And where
I just want to say one thing. I want to give an endorsement of Indie News Network. You guys are doing fantastic work. Keep doing it. Thank you so much. And let me ask you, may I ask what city you or town or area you are in? Colin?
Me?
Yeah.
DC. I'm in DC.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of East Coast.
Yes.
Well, if you ever come up to New York, let me know. Would love to meet up and chat.
Yeah, definitely.
See me on Twitter. It could be any hour of the day at Anthony Zenkus. You know, I'm doing my part to peruse the news and find stories. Just found one out recently today about a Democratic Assembly in California not allowing child sex trafficking to be considered a major felony. So, like, you know, it boggles the mind, even just for optics. Like, why would you make it so easy for the Republicans to point the finger and say, oh, look, you know, you're supporting child sex trafficking. And by the way, in their favor, 2 Republicans on the committee voted to make it a serious felony. So I'll be doing my part there and perusing all the outlets I can to see if there's anything worth people's time and attention. And that's about it. And I just have one final message, which is don't lose hope. Do not lose hope. Hope matters. And I don't just mean hope in the hope and change Obama kind of way. I mean, the belief that things can and will get better is essential for us to keep doing the hard work of organizing. That belief of each one teach one, have a conversation with someone, regardless of their political background, about why things are the way they are and how they could be better. That if we preserve that belief, and maybe a Cornel West candidacy, I think, could be something that galvanizes that belief that things can be better and that we can have something to do with it. Let's keep that in the front of our mind and not allow these horrendous people to make us feel defeated, because that's how they win.
Preach on. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll put you in the back. Again, you will be seeing Colin and Anthony regularly here, or as much as they are available for the show on RBN. Just shouting out these super chats. I love how most conspiracy theories end up true. And that's actually what is conspiracy theory has taken on a meaning more than what it is. It's meant to mean it's crazy, when a conspiracy theory just means something that's not part of the ruling class. This is actually a concoction or something made up by, I think the agency was the CIA that made up this idea of conspiracy theory. Shaming won't work if you point out 9% of Trump vote was registered Democrats. Trump voters are registered Democrats. Then accuse then accuse of extortion and entitlement. Usually shut them up. Great point. Thank you for that super chat. This one here: reasons for Democrats to vote for Biden: increased Capitol Police spending, Biden's Trump border wall, increased budget for ICE, keeping forever wars funded, denied student loan forgiveness, etc. These are some great super chats here. Glad I was able to get it. And this is Janice again. Stop using elite industry leaders, job creators, and use hoarders, parasites, predators, propagandist labels. Need massive and consistent pushback. That is an awesome point. And thank you for all of these super chats. We're going to be signing off here. Make sure you stay tuned for JB and Sabby at 6 p.m. Eastern. Signing off.